to make.
And I'm Sarah Wheeler, and this is The Mother of It All, where we take on culture through the lens of motherhood and motherhood through the lens of culture.
Hello, Sarah.
Hi.
How's it going?
It's good. I'm moving.
I know.
I'm getting
I know.
out of this shithole. Sorry. I've lived here for 15 years. I love it very much. I had both of my children here.
We all process our grief in different ways.
Yeah.
And if it helps you to call it a shithole, then I support it.
Yeah, I've just been going around like kicking stuff, and you have to justify the expenditures of a move. You have to turn on your current place, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really hot.
I keep walking around going after we move, like in the new house, I will I will cook on Sundays, like meal prepping for the whole week. And
you'll be one of those people.
In the new house, I will take the energy that it takes to teach my daughter how to get herself independently ready in the mornings instead of just doing everything for her and whining the whole time in the new house, as if this cramped apartment was making those things not possible.
So maybe I've been thinking about a housewarming gift for you, and
is it a new personality?
Well, now I'm thinking you need a new house, new Sarah, piece of merch, like a sweatshirt or maybe a hat. An eye mask.
Mm-hmm. It's a full-time professional chef and a new personality. Yeah.
I'll do what I can within my budget.
Yeah, we take we take all of our shit into parenting. Right? It's we take all of our shit to the new house, literally and figuratively.
Yeah. Well, I feel stressed and excited for you. And the next time we talk, you'll be living somewhere new.
I'll have prepared so well for the next time we talk.
Oh my gosh.
And
oh no.
I'll be so on everything. It's going to be overwhelming. The world can't handle me in a new house firing on all cylinders.
I think that you just need the same old Sarah, because I like you the way you are.
Just a little.
I wish for you a new house with more space. Yeah, exactly. You'll still be you in all of your creaky old house ways, but in a new, spacious house. More room to be you.
I do think being able to see all of my shoes is going to make me, the 10% happier concept. I think that's at least maybe even 11. Just to every day be like, look at these shoes. They're so great.
Yeah. Well, there's all those slightly depressing, but also validating studies about there are things about how money doesn't make you happier,
right.
but
there's
it
a curve.
Does.
It's it does until a point, and then it does. Wears off. I think maybe space is like that. Is a little bit, right. Your child's not sleeping in a closet actually does make you happier.
Yeah.
But your child having a room for all of their instruments maybe even makes you sadder.
Right. Yeah. I think you're going to, Well, moving is a big deal. And that's what I have to say about it.
Thank you.
And I'm thinking of you in this challenging
Thank you.
time.
Why don't you, instead of all that thinking, why don't you come down and carry this big ass couch on Saturday? How's it going to fit through the door, Miranda? We could use someone with your brain power. It's okay. I do appreciate your thoughts and prayers.
I don't. All I know is legs come off.
Yeah,
legs, little stumpy legs. Things come off furniture. I've learned
the old stumpy legs.
But then you also remember what was built in. When you move, you're like, oh, we built this in this room.
Yeah, there is no way to get...
You learn terrible things like that.
You know the thing about do it for future you? You plan, you make your lunch at night for future you. So that future you is she made lunch for me.
I don't do that. One but does. I've heard of that.
One that follows advice does.
Sarah in the new house
thinks about future Sarah in the new house all the time. Yeah. And that definitely constructing the furniture in the room is such a not thinking about future you moment. And I've done it so many times. There is a bunk bed made out of a great oak tree that weighs, or something that weighs 400 pounds, that is just we're going to have to like light on fire. I don't know how it got in. We were not thinking
it's never coming
about
out.
future us. Yeah.
You know, I this isn't about moving, but thinking of your future self. I have a little future me thing that I did recently that I want to share.
Tell me.
I told my husband not to show. So the kids, Griffin has seen Moana. Nellie has never seen Moana. I really like Moana. I was like, okay, when I learned that recently, that Griffin doesn't remember it, I was like, okay, so we have like a fresh opportunity all over again. And for like a few days, I realized I was subconsciously then saving Moana for a sick day, like because I hate when we're all sick. And it was like a treat for future me planted somewhere in the future. Yeah, that's like, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be all pissed off that we're all sick and it feels gross. And then I will remember that I have this little treat that I can do, which is watching Moana.
Like the little special tea bags you keep in the back of the drawer in your kitchen.
Exactly.
Yeah, your treats are real vanilla.
I know. I've been told this. But so I like actually told David, I actually like said like, do not show them Moana. Like you don't understand how upset I'm going to be. I'm actually saving that for when we have COVID or something.
You took care of your future self. So I can't wait to talk to future you who's like, we did it. I threw up 7 times today, but at least we saw Moana for the quote unquote first time. You really love this movie. I've never seen Moana.
I don't.
Should I save it for a sick day?
Yeah,
okay.
Save it.
Great.
Save it. Oh,
I know there's like a chicken and Lin-Manuel Miranda. Yeah.
It's, I mean, I don't even know. I'm probably building it up too much, man.
I think, knowing you, I think you're going to be satisfied. I think. And I love this idea of like, because we have that drawer in our house that like, of like the shit, the kind of like the present drawer, but it could also be for your kids of just like, if you have to go on a 6-hour drive and you're just like, oh, there's like a new coloring book in here. Yeah. Or, or like it was kind of the COVID drawer for a while where I was like, oh, we have COVID again. It's time to like break out a fresh packet of perler beads. Yeah, but you can put things in there like in your mind, like watching Moana.
Yeah, it's like my visualization is like a little sugar cube.
Yeah,
in my future.
Yeah. Speaking of visualization, I'm distracted by our guest because I already told her this, but I want our audience to know now that like, how when you go get your hair done, do you ever like, do you bring the picture of like what you want to look like? And it's always like Jessica Biel or something where my hairstylist has to have me like sign something to show that like, I do not think that she's going to make me look like an actress or a model, but it's more the hair. And Kaitlyn has the hair of my dreams, which also is like kind of waved in this beautiful way that my hair doesn't do. And again, the hairstylist has to be like, but you don't have that hair. And I'm like, that's what you're for. So it's never.
So Kaitlyn Teer.
Yeah.
Tell us about
how did you come to have the hair of my dreams?
That is so kind of you to say. And
did you wake up like that?
Yes.
Oh my!
I haven't even washed it today. I have
probably
had
gets better unwashed.
A knit cap on it. I've had a bike helmet on it.
That's so Pacific Northwest of you.
That's amazing.
That's so cute.
But like junior high and high school, me would have been shocked to hear anybody say that. Like, this is the hair that you want.
You didn't grow into your hair until
it took some time to figure out. Yeah, but it started with bangs, and I think I've almost had them for like 15 or 20 years. Like, I just don't think the world will ever see my forehead again. It's just
that's what I decided. Every few years I'm like, should I? And then I'm like, nope, it's not. No one wants to see that.
I'm the opposite. I'm like, I will consider bangs every few years. Yeah. And then it's like a terrible. Sarah, maybe after your first sleep in your new house, maybe you'll wake up with hair like Kaitlyn.
Oh yeah. Sarah in the new house is definitely just the air in the new house is, I feel like is kind of wave making. It's not like it is a few blocks closer to the ocean.
There you go. It's just enough. It's a microclimate. It's going to be a little different. All right. Well, as much as we could talk about hair all day, and we certainly could, Kaitlyn, first I want to introduce you. I'm sure everyone knows who you are, but for those who are not familiar with Kaitlyn and her amazing hair, Kaitlyn Teer is an author and essayist based in the Pacific Northwest. She's an editor at Cup of Joe, everyone's favorite blog, OG blog. And I found her work originally on Electric Lit, where she wrote this lovely short story. If we could, I mean, lovely and heartbreaking, about the heat dome. I think that was the heat dome that happened in 2021.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right. Yeah. Because I was 37 weeks pregnant.
I was also pregnant
in that heat dome. Yeah. I thought, because your younger is.
He'll be 3 in January.
Okay. So, and my youngest turned 3 in July. Okay.
So you were much more pregnant than I was at that point.
Summer pregnancies are not good, and then heat domes are also not good. Anyway, so, and at Cup of Joe, I should say, Kaitlyn also helped launch Big Salad, Joanna's newsletter, which is a delight. So welcome, Kaitlyn. We're so excited to have you here.
Thank you. I was so thrilled when you reached out. I've been a reader of both of your work for so long, and I feel like we're internet friends. Like, we go way back, and it's very nice to be with you, like, face to face.
And I think that might be, I mean, I share that, and I think that might be like 70% of Sarah and I's motivation for having this podcast is to deepen these parasocial relationships and make them real.
Love it. It's working.
I don't know.
I feel like that when I listen to your podcast. I'm like, these are my friends. We're all just hanging out.
It's real. We're your friends.
100%. I definitely feel that now, especially, you know, Kaitlyn, you and I have shared one of my most intimate real friend bonding moments, which is that I bailed on a plan that we made.
I love people who cancel. I'm the best person to cancel on. I'm delighted for people who do that. Good job.
What, did she make up some bogus excuse, or?
I did over-explain. I probably did.
I got lost in Moana. I just the songs took me away, and I lost track of the time.
It was kid-based. It was a kid-based excuse.
Well, we were going to try to meet up in Seattle for the Big Salad event that took place.
And I really wanted to go. It was Joanna Goddard in conversation with Kate Bear. I mean, I was going to get to meet Kaitlyn. I was going to take the train. It's going to be beautiful. And then children got in the way.
But speaking of children getting in the way, we're here to talk about moms and hobbies.
Yes, we're here to talk about hobbies. 20 minutes in, we get to the meat of the show. So, Kaitlyn, for a long time, as we've mentioned, Sarah and I have been have had you on our wish list of guests to talk about hobbies. And I think, as I said to you, like in quotes, hobbies as a mom, like, which I do feel like it's its own beast.
For sure.
So you know, as I talk about incessantly, last summer I took this surfing lesson, and I'm still processing like why it meant so much to me and why it felt so good and why I want to do it again and all of this stuff. And then you wrote this lovely essay for Cup of Joe about how mountain biking and learning to mountain bike helped you in early motherhood. And you write about having something beyond work and beyond caregiving. And also about having never thought of yourself as a badass and how that really resonated with me in terms of how I felt when I was standing there being just pummeled by the waves. It was like there was something kind of badass about it, and I didn't know that I had that in me. So I would love to hear you share a little bit about, you know, your mountain biking experience and reflecting on it. What are we doing when we make time to do things that we're bad at or that we're totally new at, especially in motherhood, where time is such a finite resource?
Yeah. So I guess I should set the scene a little bit by even just mentioning where I live, which is Bellingham, Washington. It's a small coastal city between Seattle and Vancouver, and it's right where the Chuckanut Mountain Range meets the Salish Sea. And we've got this mountain called Galbraith, which is just like world-class mountain biking trails. And that makes the sport just like very accessible here. Like I can just drive like 10 minutes and be at the mountain. And it also means it's so much a part of the culture here. Like it feels like everybody kind of mountain bikes a little bit or knows somebody who does. And so I came to mountain biking though after having my children, and it actually started as hobbies often do, I think, when some friends started mountain biking. And my husband got into it while I was pregnant. And I was like, why are you doing this new thing while I am pregnant and I cannot join you? And I felt a little bit like placated, like, he was like, you're going to love it. You should do it. You should do it when you have the baby.
You know, in like 2 to 3 years.
Right. Okay. I'll look forward to that. I'm sure that will happen. And
it's your tiny little sugar cube way in the future.
He was like, I really think you're going to like it. And I was like, I really don't know. But then I was, I think 5 months postpartum when I first went, which seems bananas to me now. But at the time I was like, okay. A very good friend of mine, who also actually was my midwife, she was like, I'm going today. Do you want to come with? And I'm teaching another person who's never done it before. And I've got 2 bikes. So she just like cleared the way. It was like she had the bikes. She was teaching somebody else. So I didn't feel like I would be dragging a whole group down, you know, in the back. And it just felt like a very supportive and low-key way to dip a toe into the world of mountain biking. And so, I mean,
it feels so like telling that a midwife did this for you. I'm like, I think I think she might have known what she was doing. Like 5 months postpartum.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just feels a little like genius.
I also just feel like she's that friend where she's like, when she's up ahead being like, you can do this. I'm like, I can do this.
Right.
So yeah, I'll throw myself down a mountain behind you. Sure.
It's not as hard as having a baby.
Right.
There is that. I think the badassery element, right? It's like you reflect on in childhood, like, oh, I'm not a badass. I had all these narratives too in childhood about myself as timid, or, I mean, and these extend into adulthood as well, about like anxiety and stuff. And then I think that we face a lot of fears in our matrescence experience, and it can often be really horrible. And we go to these very intense, like physical, mental brinks. And so we do kind of experience very viscerally, like, oh, I am kind of a badass, maybe. Like, I'm still here.
Yeah.
Maybe I should explore this side of myself.
Yes. And I was in mountain biking, pushing myself to the physical limit in a way that felt like it was for me. I was not doing it in service of like my child, like in the way that, you know, I had a very difficult time breastfeeding. And so that was also happening for me at 5 months postpartum, where it was like, I'd had mastitis several times and I was dealing with like an oversupply, and I hated pumping. And it was just like, I didn't know until I started doing it how much I needed something very physical for my body. But that was just for me. Where before that, I feel like most of my hobbies were fairly quiet, contained, contemplative hobbies, like reading and knitting and baking, and not mountain biking.
When you say mastitis, I just did you do this too, Miranda? I just touched my breasts. You know, I just went like, ugh. I still do that. Like, ooh. Well, I wanted to ask the two of you, what is a hobby? Like, how do you define that?
I think that Kaitlyn, you told me about this Anne Helen Petersen piece, who I think I would imagine most of our listeners know who Anne Helen Petersen is, but if you don't, she's a writer and a journalist, and she was a senior culture writer at BuzzFeed, sort of in a BuzzFeed heyday, and she wrote a beautiful piece about quality leisure time and about this what is a hobby question, and also what is a hobby for women versus what is the hobby for men. She explores golf as an extremely time-consuming hobby that mostly men do, and that's also totally unproductive
and very expensive.
Very expensive.
And expensive, right? And so she asks in this piece, is there any female-dominated hobby that takes as much time away from the home as golf? And she finds that, quote, female-coded hobbies take place within the domestic sphere. Several contribute to or intersect with homemaking domestic tasks. They can be readily interrupted.
Like you're knitting, and Kaitlyn.
Yes, they're episodic. You can do them while multitasking. You can sit on the floor near your children and knit while they're playing.
Right. And so she says she calls this is leisure that can easily be constrained or contaminated. And she references some studies, but yeah, I thought that was very interesting.
Right. Golf can't be contaminated. You're like in another town.
Fully away.
Totally.
Yeah. In your special clothes.
And I feel like, I wonder if, Kaitlyn, that relates to mountain biking for you. I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you think you felt pushed after having children to, you said that before that a lot of your hobbies had been more like, small and quiet and in the home. Do you feel like having children made you need to find a hobby that wasn't like that?
I'm sure that was part of it.
That couldn't be contaminated?
Yeah. And I would say, like, when my firstborn, my daughter, was young and I was new to mountain biking, I didn't do it that often. Like, I went that first time. And then I went maybe a couple of times that year. I did buy a bike right away, but it was like from a teenager who was upgrading. Like, I did not buy an expensive mountain bike. Like, I don't have like cool gear.
I traded Mike's Hard Lemonade for it.
But it was then the year after, which was actually during the pandemic, when it was during the lockdowns, that mountain biking became so much more important to me. There was a stretch of time where it felt like that was maybe one of the only ways that I was leaving the house, where I was caregiving and working from home. And it was like, on the trails, you should keep more than 6 feet of distance between you and the bike in front of you. And so, yeah, there was a stretch of time where I felt like I was once a week, like, meeting up with 2 of my closest friends, and we would just pedal and have these really like heavy and deep and important conversations about what was going on in our lives and in the world. But we would be like shouting them up the trail at each other while we were pedaling. And it just felt really important to have a way to leave the house safely during that time. And it was like, Anne Helen Petersen has this other phrase that she uses when writing about hobbies called secondary optimization, where you're basically like checking multiple boxes off. But I feel kind of like neutral about it. Like, I understand that there's a little bit of a critique where like a hobby for itself is just enough. But for me, like, when a hobby can, in one activity, get me outside, get me with friends, get me moving and feeling embodied in a way that is nourishing and revitalizing, and also is like kind of resetting me mentally and emotionally, like that, all of that can happen from one activity. That's a huge win and feels like such a gift.
So wait, is secondary optimization a bad thing? Is that about what we do where we like try to make hobbies that are really just kind of like optimizing something.
Well, I think that goes back to your question about like, what is the hobby? I'm thinking about this.
Yeah, which wasn't answered, by the way. Don't think I didn't try.
Convenient.
Yeah. I think a hobby, let me answer really quick. I think for me, and I think what is interesting about the reason I brought up the Anne Helen Petersen thing about women's hobbies versus men's hobbies, I think is the idea of unproductivity. Mm-hmm. Like, I think in this conversation, I'm thinking about what is something that we do as mothers for ourselves that is not related to our motherhood, not related to our work, that is relatively unproductive, and costs time, certainly, and potentially money. Because I think that is what I wanted to talk about today. I think that's what's really interesting. And I think sometimes we take on hobbies where, speaking for myself, I often don't consciously reflect on pursuing it. Like surfing is just, I keep using it and I'm going to keep using it because it's an example of something that I just kept being interested in for no clear reason. Like every time we were at the coast, I watched the surfers. When I was at Powell's Books, I would pick up a book about surfing. I was just drawn to it. I don't really know why. And I finally let myself just be drawn to it and follow that pull. And I think in motherhood, it's something that we rarely, if we are drawn to something that's outside of our work and outside of our children, I think that's important. I think that's kind of interesting. And I think that's a place where we might learn something new about ourselves. And that certainly has been my experience. And like feeding a part of ourselves that maybe is starving for that. Maybe that's what that pull is about, the pull to whatever hobby you happen to feel pulled to.
Yeah. I mean, I have a similar experience with swimming. My whole life, I've been a terrible swimmer. I just, as a kid, at the few times I did swimming
with that hair, no.
These beachy waves.
Those beachy waves?
No. I grew up landlocked, so I grew up in Illinois, so I did not grow up near a great body of water. I was just always like cold and miserable during swim lessons. My body wanted to sink. I was not a floater. I was not at ease in the water. And I had a similar experience to what it sounds like you described, Miranda, with surfing, which is we were at the beach with our kids and this woman biked up, tossed her bike down, just like got into her swimsuit, stripped off, and just like waded out into the water, totally unencumbered, and then just stood there waist deep, kind of taking it in, and then just floated on her back for a while, and then swam parallel to shore back and forth on this tiny little beach kind of cove where we were at, and then just got up and sat on the water, like sat on her towel, dried off, and biked on. And I was like, this woman is living.
You're like, that's everything I want to be.
And speaking of the golf thing, like what I think about when you tell that story, Kaitlyn, my immediate experience is I'm like, how many like points did she have to cash in to get that much time away? It's like to take a bike ride and then get in the water. That's extra. And then she's going to have to dry off. And I don't like, I feel like I get a lot of time in my relationship, compared to some friends of mine, but it is like the idea of golf, I mean, I just don't want to do it, but it makes me, or surfing is like, it makes me so uncomfortable. I think the level of, that's a real hobby. Because if I take your definition of a hobby, Miranda, it's like most of the things that I would say are hobbies are really related to my work,
productivity,
and creativity, and so I enjoy them. But like that's what I save for like my special times is like reading a book or something like that, or writing, and it isn't. Yeah, it does, I guess, still feel like productive.
Yeah, I think anytime you have like that
else?
should,
yes,
right? You know, I have that should idea, like, oh, I should read that book right now, or even if it is sort of pleasurable.
Right. And I would hate for someone listening to be like, oh, great, now I've got to figure out how to take up surfing or mountain biking. And to be clear, that is just absolutely not the thing. And sometimes you really are in survival mode. And so you just take whatever time you can get when you can get it.
This episode of Mother of It All is brought to you by Freya, the easiest way to let go of your stuff. Whether you're giving or getting free stuff, Freya says yes to taking the bag and leaving the baggage.
So, Miranda, you know that I'm moving on Saturday, and I cannot tell you the number of things that I have to sell or get rid of. And honestly, I feel like I would pay like $1 million just to have somebody take it off my plate.
Yes, I can relate to that. I will say that getting rid of stuff is one of the only joys of moving. And I think that when we moved into what I hope will be our forever home, I got rid of so much stuff. And Freya had just launched. And so I was very excited to use this app, which is designed to be easier to use than Buy Nothing or Craigslist, other ways of getting rid of free stuff. Because as the name implies, it's all about just, it's free. You're not trying to sell anything. You're not trying to, negotiate. You just want stuff to be gone.
So you download the Freya app, and then what do you do?
Yeah, so you can check out Freya.com to learn all about how it works. And so, yeah, you download the Freya app, and then when you want to get rid of something, you have some choices. So, for example, if I wanted to get rid of a beloved toy that hasn't been played with in 3 years, but I know it would be demanded that we keep it forever, I might choose the option where we do have to coordinate. Someone needs to coordinate with me to come pick it up, so that I can do it after bedtime, stealthily, in an alleyway, where my kids can't
But you
see.
can also just say, come get it. I put it on the curb. Lovely. That's what
there's
I'm
even
looking
a free
for right
pile.
now. Great.
You can take a picture of a pile and you can say, this is a pile, and it's free.
That sounds so exciting to me. So if you're in Portland, Oregon, Seattle, or Atlanta, Freya is currently active. You can download the app. It is hoppin'. And they're also actively seeking help to get Freya fully loaded across the US and Canada. So you can help by downloading the app and just showing that this kind of thing is something you're interested in, posting something that you're sick of tripping over, and getting it going.
I think to your point about like, what is a hobby? I mean, part of it is just, how do you want to spend your time? Like, if you do get an hour of free time, whether that's in the home or you're able to leave your home, like, how do you want to spend that time? And definitely I've had those moments, especially in new parenthood, where the baby is finally napping and you're like,
frozen.
Now what do I do with my time?
Yeah. Check Instagram.
Yeah, it's your algorithm, right? That's why we have the revenge scrolling at night, where it's like, this is finally the time that I have to myself, and so I'm just gonna zone out and scroll. So I think it takes an amount of like being at a certain level of okayness, like you're not drowning, to be able to do a hobby. And ideally, like, your partner is supportive and on board with you getting that time. And I mean, I've had moments where my spouse has been like, oh, you need to go do that. Don't feel guilty. Like, you should go do that. And you're like, maybe I should go for a walk. Like, I
Kaitlyn, can I ask how many like hours a week you mountain bike?
Oh, 0.
Oh, okay. I thought
Is it like once a month?
I mean, I'm so glad you asked that because it's
now I get to call you out every Sunday from, if you were golfing.
Here's the thing,
I work in the margins of my time. I've never had an equal amount of childcare to the amount of hours that I've worked.
And you're writing a book right now. Is that okay to say? Right, you're writing a book.
Thank you.
So you work and you're writing a book. I mean, and you have 2 little kids.
I don't have family nearby that provides free and casual childcare. It is very much an effort between my husband and I to make leisure time happen for each other, and we talk about it, and it's something that we're committed to. And I wouldn't even say it happens weekly, but when it does, it's glorious.
I also think, something that we wanted to touch on is this idea that's related to the what is a hobby question is I think the joy of learning that Kaitlyn and I sort of both were getting at, being new at something.
I hate
the idea that you're
bad
at something, and I, and that Zen concept of beginner's mind.
Yes.
To experience beginner's mind, which is it's this Zen Buddhist concept, sometimes also called child mind, related to embracing uncertainty and sort of a mindful curiosity. And I think particularly for parents, any experience of beginner's mind we can have both feeds us just in general, and then also helps us in our parenting, because anytime we experience a childlike perspective, helps us connect again with our kids.
Yeah, we talked about this when we talked about psychedelics. That kind of like experiencing life, in a brain space more similar to your children helps parents with kind of empathy for their kids and is also delightful. But what if
and I don't think the hobby has to be like weekly. Like, I think what I'm getting is like, it doesn't have to be weekly, right? Like, I did one surfing lesson and I'm going to do another one in the next 3 years.
Right. That's another piece, the timescape for parents.
Yes,
that I think is, so I appreciate, Kaitlyn, that like you answered that honestly. Yeah. And that now I get to be like, okay, but maybe if she goes mountain biking like once a month or once every 2 months or something, is that a hobby? Is that enough?
It is for me.
Yeah.
It is for me.
Okay.
Totally.
And I feel like too, my kids.
Maybe I've been pressuring myself too much.
My kids.
Yeah.
You got to stay bad at it too, right?
My kids are into it now. And so that lets me do it more often.
Oh, that's sweet.
Like we'll go on the bunny trails, and I have a tow rope for my daughter that like attaches to her little bike to help her up the hill. And my son has a seat on my spouse's bike that he rides on. And so that has opened up for us so much more time for doing this thing, and we can do it together. And that's its own sweet thing. But back to the beginner's mind, like I am bad at so many things and they all bring me so much joy. Like I've taken up birding. And I'm not great at it, but I've had some really transcendent experiences going along with friends who are avid birders. I'm always just kind of glomming on and learning hobbies from my friends. Like, will you take me? Will you show me? I did a DIY swimming club with friends for a year. And that was like a kind of like a weekly commitment on Sunday afternoons. We would just go to our local pool and swim together, which was something I had always wanted to do, but was there's feels like a culture in the like, the people who know how to like go into the locker room and take a shower and put on their swim cap.
Special caps.
Yes, I was like, can I use that like kickboard thing that you're like, it was so not a place that I felt comfortable. So going with friends and with people who knew what they were doing and had a range of skill levels. Like one of the friends like couldn't swim at all, who was part of it. And we had this, we called her our coach. She had just retired from coaching high school swim for years. And so she even showed us like drills. And it was just this kind of weird ragtag group of people, and we all wanted to learn how to swim laps for various reasons, and it was so great and life-giving. I'm trying to think of other.
I just took swim lessons for the first time in a really long time.
What?
And
That's it.
I tried to, I was like, I'm going to swim 10 laps every day. I was in Mexico at this like wellness retreat. So it was very like an easy place to do all the things we're talking about, you know, like focus on yourself, and it's not domestic and there's time.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to swim 10 laps every day. And I don't like to put my face in the water. Like most of my lessons were just like putting my face in the water. And I did it a little, you know, at like 50% fidelity. And I was so proud of myself. And I came back and I told my kids, and I showed them that I could like jump into the water and do a cannonball without plugging my nose anymore. And they were so proud of me. And because they have this narrative they picked up about how I suck at swimming, which is partly true, but I just don't like the cold water, as you said, Kaitlyn. But then I was like, I'm going to come back and like do it. And I just couldn't make the time for myself. I'm not saying the time isn't there. I'm saying Sarah in the shitty apartment, maybe in the new house, this will be different. Like Sarah in the shitty apartment could not make that commitment.
You know, I would say it's a hobby or a pastime or a thing that you try or whatever this is, like an interest, right? Exploring an interest is not a means to an end. Like the whole point is like, it is self-contained. Like you did it. You didn't fail. You didn't not do, because you did.
Because I didn't.
You did learn a new thing and
unlock some.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
Like you're not trying to be good at, right? Like I'm not trying to be good at something. I'm just checking something out. You know,
or
just kind of like
to do it consistently. Like there's no sticker charts for your hobby.
Right.
The point.
But I love stickers. And this is what is the prize. Like I actually think I'm a badass. When we were talking about badassery, I think I'm a badass and I'm good at like everything. And then when I do stuff and I suck, I'm like, this must not be true. I should get away from this alternate reality. And so it's So
you don't like beginners.
I'm a big quitter.
Yeah, you're like quitter's mind.
Its own kind of strength.
Okay, but I could kind of get my head around like it's not the journey is the destination kind of thing, of just like it's just more about the time and the experience than the outcome.
I have a question.
I did ride a horse, and I was last week for the first time, and I was like, should I? I was like, should I buy a horse? I was like, how good do you have to get to like gallop, like in season 2 of Bridgerton? And they were like, we don't know what you're talking about, and it's probably would take you many years. But I also, just as an aside, understood why like women and horses have had a relationship of like a sexual connection. Okay, that's it.
Man, you know, to circle back to you talking about your kids watching you cannonball.
Yeah.
I think that's also something that we're doing. And I want to hear Kaitlyn's thoughts on this, is modeling for our children joy for joy's sake or pleasure for the sake of pleasure. Like sort of there's an element of, as ever, this is like against productivity culture, against capitalistic value systems, just sheer joy in being.
Yes. I want my children to see me sitting. I want them to see me reading. I want them to see me doing something that is maybe time consuming and a little bit ridiculous, and still have it not turn out like beautiful, like to make something and have it be a flop, but to have enjoyed the process. Like those values of like curiosity and creativity and joy are really important to me, especially uncoupled from work, from paid labor. And when we were talking about what is a hobby, I was kind of tracking this. Do you remember when Etsy became a thing?
Yeah, when Etsy was like,
everybody was like, I can
Ukrainian
monetize my hobby.
Yeah.
And there were these people who then all of a sudden could just spend all day knitting. It's like, that seems kind of like a nightmare, but if that's what makes you happy, that's great. I have no desire to monetize my hobby. Um, and then I feel like now we've got like content creators who are like monetizing the like aesthetic side of like the videos of them doing their hobbies. And we even have TV shows about, I was thinking about this. We have a lot of reality TV shows about hobbies, like people who like, I don't like glass blowing and making
ceramics.
There's TV shows about birding, about like all. So now we like watch people doing leisure in a way that's adjacent to doing the leisure yourself.
Do you think that's like a good thing for the culture or a bad thing or what?
I don't know. It is just a thing.
It is a thing.
I mean, I certainly have enjoyed watching baking shows and felt like I could become quite knowledgeable at commenting on the crumb and like be totally incapable myself of producing such a crumb.
Well, I actually love to bake. Bottoms. Baking is one of my hobbies. I would call it a real hobby. Like I did it before I had kids for, and I would spend days, I've made several wedding cades for friends and stuff.
That's amazing.
And it brings me like deep joy and it gives me like, what's his name? Cal Newport, the like digital minimalism guy. He's like kind of close to the edge of like a kind of bro that I can't take, but like just on the good side of it, where I do like his stuff about how
he's not a Huberman.
Yeah, no, I don't think he's like a bad guy. He's just like a little, but he's like better than the like Atomic Habits dude. And he has a lot of great ideas, and he talks in digital minimalism about how like it's not enough to just like be on screens less. You have to create something that takes its place, this kind of like uninterrupted leisure time. And baking like is just like always an immediate thing like that for me. But in my current state, it gets contaminated. Like it gets, not my recipes, they are flawless, but like, but my kids are in the home or like, or I'm cooking on a Saturday and then it's not a hobby anymore. It's a thing I'm trying to like sneak away to do. And then I'm mad at my kids when they interrupt me. So I would love like, it's like, how can something like that in a new stage of life be uncontaminated?
I also feel like I want to protect my children's emerging hobbies. And this is like a new phase that we're entering in with my 5-year-old. Where like, I asked her, we were talking, I was like, how do you think you'd like to spend your time when you get older? And she was like, I want to garden and knit and make things. And it wasn't like a career that came from
it wasn't like I want to be a doctor.
She does say that she's got her like career interests, but like I want her to also think about like how she wants to spend her time when she gets older outside of work. And it was funny, we were watching the Olympics like so many families this summer.
That was fun family
and it was
content.
Like
I miss it.
A fun way to introduce my kids to all these sports that they'd never seen, and at like 5-year-old, it's like the opportunity to become elite has already surpassed them. You're out of the game. Like, this is a sport that you could do for fun. And I was watching it with my kids, and there was this sense of like they were picking up on the values of like being the best at something, and like there was like the scoring and the points and the medals,
and like the second place person is a loser, and you're like, and you're like fucking amazing.
Exactly. I was trying to explain like anybody who is there has already accomplished.
It all comes back to Cool Runnings yet again.
Yeah, they need to watch Cool Runnings.
Excellent point of that movie.
We don't talk enough about that.
Win. Yeah, that's a nice way of reading that film.
Awesome. I actually heard my kid parrot the other day a thing I say a lot, which is like we were watching a basketball game. We watch a lot of NBA in my house, and we were talking about like a not so good player. And one of my kids totally pulled out of like, because I repeated this enough times. For 10,000 hours that like, he was like, yeah, but they're still like in the best players in all of the world, like even if they got cut from a team, they're one. And I was just like, yeah, you got it.
And it's also like all of the other people who pick up a basketball and just like shoot around at the park. Like, that is also
my son who's like,
the
not
best.
awesome.
That is,
great use of time. I think it's wonderful to suck at something. And also there's a book that I think about a lot, even though I've never read it. Which is like, it's called like Suck at Something. And
I love that.
And it's about that. And it's just like it's good for you. It feels good to be bad at something. And I think that especially in motherhood, you know, in the context of motherhood, optimization is this sort of relentless concept, right? It's like we have to make the right choice about what I'm going to serve for dinner. I have to make the right choice about this toy versus that toy, or wooden toys versus plastic toys, or baby-led weaning versus, you know, we're constantly faced with the need to make decisions and therefore the pressure to make the right decision. And when we experience being new at something, which usually means being bad at something, there's a lot of relief from that. Like, you give yourself over to a place of not knowing and a place of just showing up, ideally, and letting someone else, you know, tell you what to do. What a relief to not be in charge.
I feel like that is, for me, has been such a hack to like acquiring a new hobby, is to like just ask friends to teach me what they enjoy. And so it becomes a way of spending time with someone I care about, doing something that they love.
Yeah.
And then they're in charge. Like, I've gone paddleboarding with a friend who knows how to read the currents. And I'm just like, I'm following you.
So ride the coattails of better people is what you're saying. That's what this podcast 100%. Is for me.
It's all. No, I do it all the time. I'm like, you know how to bird? Please show me everything.
Well, and everybody wants to share their nerdy thing.
They do.
We do. So, so me and my like little creative group of women, I have this group of 5 women that like loosely are bound by creative work. And we have this idea, we have a lot of ideas, but we wanted to do something called Deb Talks, which is like, which is just lady TED Talks, which is just Love like it. A lady telling you for 10 minutes about something they're super, you know, passionate about. You know, because when you get close to people, you learn, you're like, oh my God, I didn't know that you like absolutely understand, you know, whatever.
Barometric pressure.
Exactly. And so, right. Some of those things lend themselves to hobbies and others are just like, you know, nerdy wormholes. But you're reminding me of that and of like my desire to both kind of like, you learn everything I can from my friends and also like share my nerddom with the world.
Like, let the people that you love be experts. In your life, like that.
And dabble. Right. Like, I think that we're saying like dabble, like, and I want to model that for my kid. Like,
I dabbled in swimming.
Try
that works.
Dabble. There you go. Like, it's just, we were stuck on that hobby word. I think it's true that hobby sometimes implies like, oh, I do this all the time. And like you pick one or something, which I think is maybe an idea that I have from like childhood. Like, oh, when I grow up, I'll have a hobby or whatever, you know. I think,
I feel like I have sometimes felt the need for a companion to help me into a space that I don't feel like I would have access to. And I think that's a big part of hobbies too. I didn't feel like I could just like walk into the fitness center and know how to do the swimming thing. Like, which lane is the slow lane, or how do I not get in people's way? And I think a lot of people feel that way, like when it comes to thinking about something like lifting weights, like, how do I know what to do and where to go? And so I think that there's such an aspect to this that has to do with gender. Like, we've talked about the gender gap in leisure time. There's definitely class aspects to it. Like, I did not grow up in a family that took ski vacations. I cannot do the world of mountain sports because I have not had that opened up to me yet. Maybe I will try it like, as I get older. And then there's for sure some aspects of class to it too, like who feels welcome in which spaces. And
your current
that's
class,
where there's like people who,
and what can you afford, you know?
Yes. I mean, that's why there are people
I don't think
who
I can
are
afford
like,
the horse.
What's it called? Like Hike Club. And they make these like spaces for women of color to go hiking or to like do these outdoor activities that maybe would feel like it's just like outdoor spaces are predominantly white spaces.
Yeah.
Or like we've talked about birding a couple of times, and like J. Drew Lanham and Christian Cooper have both written brilliant books about birding while Black. And um, I think for all of us who are like already in a space, like if there's somebody who wants to like join in, like let's not also gatekeep. Like I've so much benefited from people who are like, come be a beginner with me. I'll teach you, or like I'll show you the ropes. And like
I would love the idea of like everybody, I don't know, on your like social media profile or something, like everybody has to list like the 1 to 3 things that they would mentor someone in, you know, gladly. Like you're going to teach me how to do my hair. My friend Jen I was going around for years being like, I just want to know how to do braids. And then she was like, I can teach you that. And
my
she became my braid mentor.
Didn't even gatekeep how to do my hair. Like she offered this DIY haircutting class for her clients. What? And I went to it, so nice. And it was amazing. Like she told us what tools to buy. She showed us how to use a feather razor to cut our bangs. And she was like kind of floating around from station to station, and we all just were like hacking away at our own hair in a very like lightly supervised kind of risky way.
Oh, I want more of that in the world.
Yeah. This is, I love that. I mean, I think the idea of it as a way of dabbling, also as a way to connect and create community. It's such a lovely idea. And it's something that also in motherhood we need so much. And it's so nice. I think oftentimes the point of connection, something that I love about motherhood, and that's been surprising to me, is how much inherent community there is that I feel with just other moms. Like you feel automatically connected. But then it's such a lovely, you do get to know someone in a new way when they mention something other than their job and other than their motherhood that they do. And you suddenly feel like you've got this really big window into like, you know, this, it's just like the tip of the iceberg of a person. You're like, oh, you're like this whole rich person with a whole
even
life.
Among families. Like your comment, Kaitlyn, about like wanting to show your kids that like you have leisure. I was thinking about someone on a episode of the Brene Brown podcast, someone was talking about like, are you a parent-oriented family, a child-oriented family, or a family-oriented family? I don't know who to credit this idea with, and I would love to know because I think it's really interesting. And so to be like a family-oriented family and to through the lens of hobbies, like we are oriented towards hobbies as a family. And then our family has specific hobbies that other families don't, you know, like our family loves to read. And like we have this other family that they're like big hikers. And so they started a like family hiking club. And once a month, we live in the Bay Area where there are also lots of mountain bike trails, apparently. I wouldn't really know, but I see the bikes. And there's a lot of hiking. And so every month there's like a family hike that this one family schedules, and they invite anybody and at a different like park. And because it's like a thing that everyone's doing together, my kids are interested in it. And now it's like we have this new way that we connect as a family.
I was wondering, I brought a question for you all.
Uh-oh. Permitted.
When you were growing up, like who did you see doing hobbies?
Silence.
We had this babysitter. So we grew up in this like 7 apartment house, and a lot of babysitters, like who were grad students, lived in the apartments and helped my parents raise their 5 children. And that was, you know, a nice thing about it was having a lot of different like adult models and kind of some younger ones that had more time. So we had this babysitter, Chris, who was like introduced us to physical activity of any kind. And so he did take us skiing. He would take us skiing like once a year to this like little, you know, like the jankiest place in like Vermont. And he also got us into basketball. Like he would take us to NBA games, and he loved to like code and program. and he loved science. So he would do like science experiments with us. So he was like, and he's just one of those people who is like an enthusiast, and can really like lose himself in something that he loved. So I feel like he was the first person I really saw doing things that if they meet our criteria, right, like had nothing to do with work or productivity, and brought him joy and like invited us into those. And some of those are lasting hobbies for me. Like that's definitely why I'm a basketball fan and why I ski once every 5 years, which I think is enough and is enjoyable.
Chris.
What about for you, Kaitlyn?
Yeah.
I was thinking about this, and I don't know, I'm sure you've seen memes going around about millennials adopting quote unquote granny hobbies.
No.
And I have been thinking about, like, I didn't see my parents have hobbies, really. They worked very hard, and then they also spent a lot of their parenting time supporting our activities and our after school things. But I did see my grandparents have hobbies, and they were like low cost, kind of like at home, like gardening and knitting and crocheting, woodworking hobbies. And I spent a lot of time with my grandparents growing up, like especially in the summers. And I feel sort of like this connection to them when I do hobbies, not necessarily mountain biking. But I do kind of wonder, like with millennials, I don't think we take retirement for granted, that we will have the opportunity to retire. So I do wonder if there's sort of a generational shift that's happening too, where we're like, I want to fit some of these activities in.
Oh, that's interesting.
Lifelong, instead of putting them off for this promised future when I will have the time to do them.
Yeah, the economic point of also, I'm thinking about like my grandpa who retired at, I think it was 55. You know, he worked a single career and then he retired. And I think a lot of us have no expectation of that. It's like our career in a way that is destabilizing, but is maybe also helps us to divorce our sense of self-worth from our jobs, because our jobs are so unstable. Yes. So we have to find a source of self-worth from something else. And so so maybe just valuing curiosity, or valuing newness, or valuing learning, or valuing enjoyment and pleasure, and deciding that that's where the meaning in our life comes from. And we don't expect maybe meaning from work, meaning or stability.
Yeah.
Because a lot of us haven't been able to find that.
Yes, I do think that that is a big part of all of this.
Well, I hope that I can't wait to like, can we do a part 2? At least we have to have a circle back about kind of what comes of this. Cause I feel like, I don't know, again, I get overwhelmed by like every time I see somebody's picked up like surfing or something, like, oh, but I won't have the discipline or the consistency or the time. And I like the idea of kind of the different like sideways ways of looking at this that we've arrived at today. Before we let you go, new Sarah,
new house, new hair, new hobby.
No, we're going to be reasonable. But before we let you go, Kaitlyn, do you have any culture recommendations?
My daughter and I recently got into air dry clay, and it is so much fun. We have been making like flower frogs, you know, those little like holders for arranging stems. And she's been painting them. We have got a jump start on fall decor. Like we've been making these like little ghosts that go over a little tea. Like it's very Instagram reel, like Waldorf inspired fall decor, but it's one of those things where I just was shocked. I was like, wait a minute, these instructions actually work. This was very easy, and it turned out with minimal effort. This is mind blowing. So air dry clay. Also, we've been starting our mornings listening to Snoop Dogg's Doggyland's affirmations.
The kids at the Black History Month assembly at my kids' school, the TK students do that every year. They like sing along to it. And they say like, I will have a wonderful day. And it's amazing.
I do. I feel like it's been good for me. And my mom or my kids are like, Mom, shh, like you don't sing, I'll sing. It's a really uplifting thing to do together. And then I am reading right now Chelsea Beaker's new novel, Madwoman. Mm-hmm. And she's a Portland-based writer. I'm sure you know.
I recently learned that.
Yeah. I've read all of her work, Godshot, Heartbroke, and Madwoman. And she is such a good writer. I'll read anything she writes. But this book in particular is so powerful. It's about motherhood, and the protagonist, Clove, is trying to unravel the effects of growing up in a family of origin with domestic violence and substance abuse, and is so dear and earnest in her efforts at parenting her own children. And she gets kind of wrapped up in wellness and like fancy grocery stores. And it's also a little bit of a thriller. So I would recommend that book as well. And then kind of a wild card, but a card game that we've been super into.
Amazing.
Is Skull King, like pirates, like Skull King. And I feel like it hits a real sweet spot where it's fairly easy to teach people, and you can play it in like 45 minutes. And it does take skill and strategy. It's not just luck, but not so much that you can't also carry on a conversation while playing it, if you want to join.
All right. I do. I really do. It'll be my excuse to come up and say, it'll be to play Skull King.
I love that.
Sounds great.
I hope that happens.
I hope so too. I have always wanted to go to Bellingham, as I've told you many times.
Bring your kids. It's fun. We'll make it happen. And I would love to come back and talk Hobbies again, or
oh my gosh,
if we want a part two.
I want to, when your book is ready, come talk.
That would be such an honor. Yes.
Well, so Kaitlyn, where can our listeners follow you? What's the best way to track your work?
Thanks for asking. Yeah, you can follow my work at Big Salad, joannagoddard.substack.com. And you also can find me on Instagram at Kaitlyn Teer. And I share some of my own personal writing at kaitlynteer.substack.com as well.
Which is beautiful, by the way. Her very beautiful personal writing. Well, thank you so much, Kaitlyn. This was a joy, and come back soon.
I loved it. Thank you, Miranda.
Great.
Thank you, Sarah.
You.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to The Mother of It All.
And like my mom always said, be bad at something.
The Mother of It All is produced by Opus Nox Media with music from It's Electric. You can follow us on Substack at motherofitall.substack.com, where subscribing will get you episodes and bonus posts in your inbox, chat and comment features, episode transcripts, and more. And on Instagram at The Mother of It All. We know you are profoundly busy, but if you like listening and can manage to follow, rate, or review us in a small moment between leaning in and having it all, it will help us reach a wider audience and meet our stretch goal of getting Michelle Obama on the pod. Thanks for your support. Now get out there and have a totally passable day.